Essential question 4 is how were American forces able to prevail in the Revolutionary War? At the beginning of the war, Britain appeared to have overwhelming military and financial advantages. They had a large army, a large navy, the world's largest empire at the time. So they really did appear to have every possible advantage over the colonial independence movement. However, the Continental Army and colonial militias had several advantages themselves. They benefited first from a familiarity with the land. This was their home. They knew the terrain. They knew the best places to fight, the best places to hide, and so on. They also benefited from a stronger ideological commitment. These people were fighting for their independence and for their freedom, whereas the British soldiers were just fighting because they were given orders to fight. And finally, the Continental Army and colonial militias benefit from their use of guerrilla-style tactics like hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, and so on. I should mention here that African Americans, both slave and free, served in both the British Army and in the Continental Army. The British offered freedom to slaves who would fight for the British, and the Continental Army followed suit by also offering freedom to slaves who fought for independence. At the beginning of the war went relatively badly for the Continentals, who suffered a string of losses. However, that is going to change with the Battle of Saratoga. I know we don't tend to spend a lot of time on wars in terms of how they're fought, troop movements, battles, that type of thing. We typically only focus in on a battle if that serves as a major turning point in the war. And here, the Battle of Saratoga in 1777 is going to be a major turning point, because after this, the Americans are going to have the advantage of an alliance. So the Americans managed to defeat the British at the Battle of Saratoga in 1777, and that's going to convince the French that the Americans could win, and will convince them to join the Americans in an alliance. And the French, who were a monarchy themselves, really did not care about our independence movement or our Enlightenment ideals or anything like that, but instead they joined the Americans in order to help damage their imperial rival, Britain. In fact, later on, Spain is going to join and ally with the Americans as well to accomplish the same purpose of injuring Britain. But French military and financial assistance after the Battle of Saratoga is going to play a decisive role in the American victory in the war, and there's a good argument to be made that the Americans could not have won the Revolutionary War without French assistance. After years of fighting, British forces are going to surrender to the Continental Army at Yorktown in 1781. And the Treaty of Paris in 1783 will officially conclude the war. The Treaty of Paris will win the Americans' recognition of their independence and will set the boundaries of the new nation. As you can see here from the map, the new nation will include everything between Canada and Florida and everything between the Mississippi River and the Atlantic. Also, the Treaty of Paris made Americans agree that loyalists or British loyalists would not be further persecuted. And in fact, many of them are actually going to leave, including slaves that had fought for the British during the Revolutionary War.